Alrighty, welcome back to Shut Up and Ball. I am Aaron Chow, accompanied by John Harris as always. And we're back to react to this interesting championship Sunday that just occurred in the NFL. So right before we dive into that, as always, you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. And if you're listening on any podcast medium, rate, review there too as well. We're Shut Up and Ball on YouTube and all free podcast streaming platforms. But anyhow, John, man, just before we dive, we'll start with the NFC game since it was there's probably less to talk about. And when I say this, I mean this more for the latter game as for the former, but not a great week for officiating, especially in the NFL and in the NBA too, but that's a side point. We didn't have our greatest, but luckily for the NFC Championship game, it didn't really matter as the Eagles took care of business 31-7 against the 49ers. Important caveat, in case you didn't watch or didn't know, Brock Purdy got hit by Hassan Reddick. It was a second drive or first drive? I forget. I want to say first drive, right? It was really early in the game. Anyhow, but nonetheless, elbow injury, couldn't throw. They throw in Josh Johnson. He also got knocked out at literally, had to go in concussion protocol, was out for the game. And we find out later, obviously, that Brock Purdy couldn't even throw. I think they said torn UCL. So Niners are handcuffed, to say the least, though, John. So any thoughts in regards to what went down this game, maybe how it affects the Eagles going forward?
For the Eagles, I don't know. I don't know what to take away from this one because it wasn't that close. I guess we can, give a major shout out to their team. Overall, I think the fact that they put up 31 points on this defense is really impressive. So, good for the Eagles. For the Niners, I don't know. I've seen some takes out there that if they had Brock Purdy, that this would have been a totally different game, and I just don't really buy that personally. I mean, they lost by 24 points. Brock Purdy fumbled twice. They lost both fumbles. I don't know. I think that this idea that Brock Purdy would have totally saved him, would have been a different game? Sure. Like maybe they score 14, 17, 21, but they allowed 31 points. I don't see Brock Purdy and that offense scoring 32, considering the way that Philly was playing. Because, as you noted, Brock Purdy got hit by Hassan Reddick, and that wasn't just because the Eagles, just got a free rusher or something. Like that defensive line is serious, right? They almost set the record. The team as a whole almost set the record for the most sacks in a single season. And so they were able to get into that backfield pretty regularly. Now, in general, it does suck that you have to go to Josh Johnson, and this is nothing about Josh Johnson as a player, but he's your fourth string quarterback, right? That you got him off a practice squad from some other team, I don't know, a month and a half ago, however long it was. So that does suck because Josh Johnson has not been in the building. He has not been there the whole year, understanding and learning the scheme. There's just way more limitations there. So obviously Brock Purdy would have been an upgrade, just considering that, he's been there the whole time. He understands the scheme. He's got, he knows how to play within the offense, all those kind of things. But just overall, I don't think that Brock Purdy is a 24-point difference maker personally. I don't know. So I think the better team won. I think the Eagles, even if Brock Purdy was healthy, I thought the Eagles were going to crush them regardless. So I thought, the blowout was going to happen anyway. Also, something of note, because this is not a Brock Purdy thing, they had 11 penalties, the Niners did. They shot themselves in the foot a lot of times in this game. That's just kind of how it goes sometimes. 11 penalties, any team that does that and the other team only has 4, I find it hard to believe that the team with 11 penalties is going to win, including the fact that the turnover battle, once again, they lost 3 fumbles. Philly didn't turn the ball over. Philly won time of possession. There was just all these key metrics that it was like when you look at those, I don't really think that, Brock Purdy could have changed a lot of that outcome. So, a really successful season for the 49ers regardless. I'm still waiting for the day that Kyle Shanahan can have a fully healthy roster. It's just really unfortunate for Niners fans, honestly, because it feels like every year there's some big key injury that happens that kind of hampers them, except for maybe last year. I can't remember if anybody notable was hurt last year. I feel like there probably was somebody, but I can't remember. Regardless, yeah, just really sucks for San Francisco because it feels like at least the last 4 or 5 years, ever since that like last Super Bowl appearance, they just haven't had a season where they could stay healthy. And for Philadelphia, I mean, hats off to Howie Roseman. You know, I was telling my dad about this because obviously I'm a Cowboys fan. And ever since the Cowboys hired Mike McCarthy, the Eagles have fired their previous Super Bowl winning head coach, hired a completely inexperienced new guy, Nick Sirianni, who was just an offensive coordinator for a very short amount of time, too, with Indianapolis before this. They got rid of Carson Wentz, drafted Jalen Hurts. Like, they had a lot of changes in some very important key positions, and they're back in the Super Bowl once again. So it just goes to show you how important ownership is, how important your general manager is. And yeah, those people need to be given a lot of credit because the fact that they're back in the Super Bowl in what felt like a pretty easy run for them too. I think a lot of people might discredit their run so far, but it just goes to show you how good of a team they are because it didn't feel like they've struggled really all year. So yeah, good for Philly.
So yeah, I picked the Niners, but I'm on a little bit of a different. I'm not to say Brock Purdy was the difference maker. I will say Philadelphia deserved to win this game, like you already alluded to. They obviously were the better team, and San Francisco did have most of those penalties were their faults. I do want to highlight, and I did look up. Brock Purdy did get injured that first drive for the Niners. Obviously, Eagles went up 7-0 on their very opening drive, and then that happens. I do want to give a little bit of credit to the Niners defense because for the most part, they did their job. They held serve. Like even when the Niners tied up 7-7, okay, the next drive, Philly did score, but it was a long 14-play, 75-yard drive. And then there's that Josh Johnson, that weird fumble where like it was just like the snap, like it went right to him. He just dropped it, and then all that happened, and that was right. We talk about all the time, like turnovers in terrible spots. That was one, because then your defense just got off the field after a long drive, and 2 plays, 25 seconds later, you got to get back out there, and you have to, stop them from going 30 yards. Philly did. So, before San Francisco, before they could even go into half, hoping maybe it would at least be 14-7. Okay, maybe we can figure something out with Josh Johnson. Oh, now you're down 21-7, and then it didn't help. Obviously, first drive of the second half is when Josh Johnson got hurt and knocked out. Granted, they were going to punt, but yeah, from there on out, it was 21-7. It was pretty much, iced from there. When I mentioned one of my many gripes I mentioned in our group chat, and obviously Kyle Shanahan, we all saw him get upset a couple of times because, just when it rained, it poured for the Niners. It felt like it was that roughing the kicker where it seems like it looks like the tight end pushes Jordan Mason into the punter. Favorable call there, but nonetheless, Eagles still scored, and it's not like the Niners put up any other points. So it's not like you could say, oh, maybe they had a chance. Niners didn't put any points up after that, so they were pretty much cooked.
I know you already mentioned this too. But the refereeing was poor in both games, and I think a lot of people focused on the other game because it was a lot closer, but it was not very good in this one either. Like the Devonta Smith catch that, yes. Then the Eagles run hurry up because they don't want it to get reviewed smartly. Like there was multiple plays like that where it's like, all right, this is an NFC championship game, and we got some mistakes. Once again, the score was not close, so who knows how much they impacted it, but it's still just a shame to see because at the highest levels of this sport, that shouldn't be happening.
And this is why I always say, like, I wouldn't, even if it was allowed to be betting in Texas, it was legal, I would not bet on the NFL because, I just don't see how people can. But regardless, it is a big part of sports now. And yeah, especially that review they mentioned, I want to throw that out there because I saw a little bit of flack being thrown towards Kyle Shanahan and them, but like they can only see what they can. And like you mentioned, Eagles hurried up, and it wasn't like a super obvious thing. I know we all at home, but like, it looked like they were just hurrying up. I don't know, like for other reasons, who knows? And it was like first drive. So I understand why Kyle Shanahan didn't pull the trigger on throwing the challenge flag, because if you fail, because once again, he didn't know if it was, if you failed that challenge, you lose a challenge and a timeout, and you're in a hospital, you're not at home. And we saw the crowd was a factor at times. I'm just backing off a little bit. I think that's a little bit of, hindsight. Where hindsight is key, because obviously, yes, we knew that now. I did like what Pro Football Focus or I think it's Pro Football Talk, they put out a tweet that like the NFL, they have all these, I have to pull up the tweet. I should have done that. But saw a lot of tweets about how we need and we've talked about it throughout the year. We just need to modernize the NFL. There's even that the punt, which luckily this didn't hurt the Eagles too much. But remember the punt that hit the wire, but the refs were like they couldn't figure out. Even watching it live, it's obvious that the punt hit the wire because you can see the trajectory, and all of a sudden the ball goes over here. But that was also a weird thing that I just remembered that happened. So yeah, it was not the best day for officiating. Just to, I guess, to put it in a lighter phrase. And obviously that first drive didn't help, but nonetheless, like I said, if Niners had other chances, just unfortunate that, like you said, lost some quarterbacks, lost both their quarterbacks. I know Purdy went back out there, and that was another thing that annoyed me. Sorry. Picked a weird day to be on Twitter during the NFC Championship game. People were like, "Oh, like why aren't they throwing it? They're down, 7-21." But as we find out later, and you do some lip reading, Brock Purdy was like, "I can't throw the ball," and it was obvious because they were running. And when they did throw it, it was like the screen passes. So yeah, basically, like I said last week with the Bills, but this was more because of injuries and situation. Like when you're one dimensional, and especially if you're one dimensional, you can't pass the ball. You're one dimensional, you can only run the ball, and you're down against a pretty good front seven, definitely a very good front a defensive group. It's tough to do that at this point. But yeah, I do want to shout Hassan Reddick because he definitely felt slept on. And on that play that he forced a fumble and hurt Purdy, he wasn't trying to do it on purpose. I will criticize Kyle Shanahan there. Like once again, you're leaving a tight end to block Hassan Reddick. Like, come on, and on a long developing play, that's something where you probably should have two. If you're gonna do it, have two tight ends. Especially, I mean, maybe Kittle you can get away with one-on-one, but Tyler Kroft, he is not known for his blocking. Like he may be a solid NFL tight end, but we both here know like he's not like Mercedes Lewis, where his only role is to block. So, but nonetheless, Eagles deserved it. They showed that they could run the ball effectively against this Niners front, and like I said, I still want to give kudos to the Niners defense because they hung in tough on a day where, and survived as long as they could on a day where their offense couldn't hold up their end, obviously due to injury. But I still would have liked to seen a healthy Brock Purdy or Josh Johnson, because we saw even with that McCaffrey was able to run with efficiency, and who knows what they could have done off the pass game, in the Niners in regards to that. But nonetheless, I mean, if the Eagles win, I just want to know every champion has always going to have a few things break their way. So it just happens that way. So we'll see what the Niners do at quarterback going forward. That will be a huge talking point. Did it go with Brock Purdy? Did they keep Jimmy G around? Trey Lance did mention, I think I saw today on Bleacher Report, you mentioned he should be healthy enough for OTAs. So, did they turn back at him, or do they go with someone else outside? So we'll see. But nonetheless, big game for the Eagles. Miles Sanders also had 2 touchdowns, but it was mainly the Eagles defense, doing their job for the most part and holding down the Niners. And we'll see them as the NFC representative in the Super Bowl. They will go on to face the winner of the AFC Championship. That one was at least a much better game. Although score-wise, there were still some questionable calls. A lot more notable questionable calls too. But the Chiefs, they took care of business. They went 23-20. No longer Burrowhead, as that obviously rubbed them. That and the mayor obviously rubbed them the wrong way in regards to their post-game comments. But they win this one 23-20. It was surprisingly a little defensive there at the end. It looked like it was going to be like the other 3 games, John. You see Mahomes fumble, we can say probably because of the ankle, who knows, but that weird fumble, Bengals get the ball, and in my mind, I was like, oh no, it's happened. The PTSD for the Chiefs. Like, they had it, they had a chance to close the door, and now they're going to lose. What were your thoughts as the Chiefs prevailed in this one?
Chris Jones, man, Defensive Player of the Year. I already said it. He had an insane performance. Obviously, I don't know if they take the playoffs into account. I don't even know when they vote, so they might have already put their votes in. And once again, I don't expect him to win, but Chris Jones is an absolute monster. 2 sacks. It felt like he was just crushing that pocket every single play. Overall, that Chiefs defensive line played really well. Frank Clark had 1.5 sacks. Karlaftis had a sack. Willie Gay Jr. got involved in half a sack. So, I mean, they just played really well. They're putting a lot of pressure on Joe Burrow throughout the day, and that's what you have to do to beat the Bengals. You can't just allow him to sit back there forever. And it clearly, made Joe Burrow just a little uncomfortable because he had 2 interceptions. And I can't remember both of them. I know one of them, it was just sort of lofted up there, and I can't really remember the exact.
Cook deflected it to, I think it was either Williams or Watson. But yeah, it was the one where it was like T. Higgins, I think.
Yeah.
I know there's that one.
I wish I could see like an all 22 angle of it, of when he threw the ball, because obviously by the time the ball gets there, there's 2 people there. But I wish I could see, maybe he thought Higgins had the guy beat. And I also can't remember if he was about to get hit or not. But regardless, really impressive performance from the Chiefs. The fact that they were able to go out there and do what they did despite, once again, a limited Patrick Mahomes. You've had some tough things go your way. Like you said early on, that fumble, or it wasn't early on, it was what, third quarter or something, when Mahomes had that just weird fumble where he tries to catch it and then all of a sudden throw the screen pass and it just flies in the air. Do you know when that was?
At the end. It was at the end of the third quarter where he fumbled and Sam Hubbard recovered it. And he was just off a drop back, like you said.
And I think they were up 7 by that point, right? Or was it tied?
It was 2013, 1st and 10
so
with a minute
7.
in the third. And they were knocking on the door. They had the Cincinnati 46.
Yeah, and so it looks like they're about to go up 2 scores. This could be a wrap. Like it's been a tough day for the Bengals to move the ball. All of a sudden that fumble happens, they get the ball back, they tie the game up. And it's like, wow, like this, if they lose, we're gonna look back at that moment and be like, oh, that could have been the game changer. But they held strong. Once again, I don't know. I can't give enough praise to Mahomes, because and Valdez-Scantling had a crazy game, which I know Packers fans are probably punching the air right now because he didn't have one of his patented like massive game-breaking drops. Travis Kelce had a really good game. Pacheco wasn't able to be super impactful on the ground, but he had a lot of receiving work, which was good to see. Also, Sky Moore with that punt return late. Like, the rookies were stepping up early. Trent McDuffie with that one tipped pass that looked like it could have been completion on a crucial down. The rookies for the Chiefs just stepped up really late, and I think that was just a credit because we were both really high on their draft, right when it happened. And then, like I said, Karlaftis gets a sack. McDuffie shows up on that crucial down. You get a big punt return from Sky Moore. Like, they made a lot of plays, but I got to give a lot of credit to Patrick Mahomes because they had basically no run game. They had, 30, 41, 42 total rushing yards. Not a single player averaged over 3 yards per carry except for McCole Hardman on 2 carries for 7 yards. So they had no run game. And still, Mahomes goes out there, throws for 326 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, doing this on a bum ankle or whatever his injury is. High ankle sprain is what I heard. So his patented like ability to move out of the pocket, make these crazy throws, he just wasn't able to do that. The one time I remember him doing it, running to his left, he like really came up gingerly on his ankle, and it clearly had affected him. But they still got the job done. And for Kelce, I think I heard somewhere on the broadcast he's like approaching some all-time playoff record. Like, I think it's like a receiving or receptions record in like a single playoff run. So I mean, I don't know, man. The Chiefs, they're balling out and they look tough to beat because all the things that went wrong in this game, they still managed to come out on top, which is kind of a scary sight.
Yeah, I want to also add, like, lost Kadarius Toney, lost McCole Hardman, lost Juju Smith-Schuster. Especially Toney and Schuster very early. I forget when Hardman went out, but still, then they had to rely on those guys. And I want to emphasize more in that rookie class. I mentioned Brian Cook. He was a safety. He got beat a couple of times, but he had that one tip to, I think that was Joshua Williams, their other rookie cornerback, who had to play some time. And then we've seen Jalen Watson play some bit too, and he was 7th round pick for them. And obviously you mentioned Isaiah Pacheco, 7th rounder. So yeah, like you already said, and you already mentioned the guys in the higher, Karlaftis and good old Sky Moore and Trent McDuffie, like those guys obviously all contributed, but even getting contributions from your later round draft picks and in a playoff game is huge. So credit the Chiefs front office and coaching staff for getting those guys ready. And obviously you mentioned Valdez-Scantling didn't have a drop. I was ready for one because as a Packer fan, he's usually good for one killer drop where it's right in his hands. That did not happen that day. But yeah, I want to emphasize Mahomes, like you said, making plays on one leg. And like, people don't know, Tony Marola mentioned a bunch like about how important it was, like that injury was limiting Mahomes in terms of, stepping into throws or, just his rhythm, things like that. Like, but he still made the darndest plays, like the touchdown pass to Scantling where it had he had to put steam on it. I thought for a second that it was an incomplete pass because it was it looked like the safety at least tipped it down and safety didn't. It wasn't safety, sorry, it's Mike Hilton because it was in the slot. Thought he maybe had a chance at the pick, but Mahomes just got it there in time. And yeah, it was just like you said, it was a game where we mentioned San Francisco had some, killer penalties, things like that. And obviously the Chiefs were a bit healthier, but Chiefs were able to weather the storm. And on the flip side too, their defense for the most part did a great job. I mean, it took on that one touchdown drive that we mentioned, it took an amazing 4th and 6 jump ball to Jamar Chase to keep the drive alive. And it was just a lot of tough throws, tough plays that the Bengals had to make on offense because their run game didn't really get going. So it was all on Joe Burrow in the pass game. And we saw it early, like you said, there's I think 3 of those sacks came consecutively. It was like on the drive. So that pretty much killed the drive. And then obviously Chris Jones came up huge late. I don't know if you saw that. There's that post someone pointed out where he basically went up against the right tackle. Dunlap wanted to switch, and he's like, no, I got this, and he got the sack there. So yeah, Chris Jones definitely. We talked last podcast, but definitely deserves more love. And once again, if he wasn't stuck behind Mr. Mahomes and Travis Kelce as the 2 other superstars in Kansas City that overshadow him, he probably would get a lot more love. But he deserves it because he was him and Mike Danna were eating that line up, and Karlaftis had a share too. So, and like you mentioned, Frank Clark 1.5 sacks, playoff Frank Clark. That was a worry for me coming into playoffs. I was like, is Frank Clark going to show up? Because he really hadn't done much in the regular season. Prove me wrong there. So, huge win for the Chiefs. Huge team win. I feel like obviously Mahomes was the driving force, but we saw, like I said, just moments of other guys stepping up, and just sucks for Joseph Asai because that last play. A little ticky tacky, Mahomes did kind of sell it, and and obviously he's getting a real, he's getting out on social media, which he shouldn't. And I'm glad to see that his teammates, the BJ Hill was sitting there with the interview with him, basically filtering questions and such. So hopefully he can bounce back because he had a pretty solid game otherwise. I was actually going to mention him, and you've had him as a baller the week before. This is a second-year guy that's becoming a critical piece of their defense.
I do want to add on Osai, just on that play. I think that in the modern day NFL, because I was talking to my dad about this, and he loves to bring up that back in the day, the defensive players were they were feared because of the things they would try to do to you, and you just can't play that way anymore on defense. And I know that it sucks for a lot of those defenders, but even there was plays where Chris Jones would want to just deck Joe Burrow, but instead of doing it, he just you don't even hit him. You don't even try to push him to the ground. He threw the ball. Don't even touch him because you never know when a flag's going to happen. And on that play for Joseph Osai, once again, I feel bad for the guy, but I think it's that same mentality thing. If the guy's going to step out of bounds, if it's the quarterback, you just kind of have to let it happen. With the QB, unfortunately, and he's a young guy. I'm sure that this is a mistake he's not going to make again in his career because this is a big learning moment for him. But it's just kind of unfortunate that, that's just how the NFL goes. And so I think that that's a big coaching thing that coaches are going to really have to drill into their players, is that when it comes to the quarterback, especially, and this is unfortunate that that's the way it works, but some of the bigger name QBs like a Patrick Mahomes, the refs are going to be a little more antsy to pull that flag out. And so it's especially in the playoffs when things are just that much tighter. You kind of, unfortunately, you can't try to hurt him. You can't try to hit him. You can't try to make him feel your presence. You just got to let it happen. And it's just kind of how the NFL is moving.
Yeah, they're trying to protect their quarterbacks. So, when there were some questionable calls with that 3rd down redo, that was definitely wily. But that one didn't end up mattering because the Chiefs punted it anyway. So, if I remember correctly. So, Bengals have some tough breaks. I know that they want to call also holding on that same play. I don't think that. I think Jeff Schwartz, former offensive lineman, he went on Twitter and said that's not holding. That's just typically how it's blocked. I mean, like I said with the Eagles game, Bengals fans, especially as a Cowboy fan right here, he would know you're gonna get some bad calls, and sometimes you just have to overcome them. Things don't swing your way. But I'm sure the Bengals will be back next year as long as their guys stay healthy. They have a lot of cap space. probably going to re-sign Burrow and Higgins. And we've seen, I think Lou Anarumo needs their defensive coordinator. I'm surprised he's not in more head coaching conversations, because what he's done with this unit is they really kept him in this game, because, it was 16-3 knocking out the door. And then I'm trying to remember the drive. But anyway, is that... I forget, but nonetheless, they kept them in this game, obviously, because there were chances 16-3. Chiefs could have, had a couple drives where they could have put the game away. They didn't. And then, although the fumble was a little fluky, other than that, like, Chiefs also, the next two possessions, they couldn't, do enough to. It wasn't until the very, very last possession where they had, and they were aided by that penalty. So, Bengals defense played great. Just fortunately, the offense, dealt with some things, and they lost the turnover battle, and sometimes it's just simple as that. So big win for the Chiefs, obviously, as now they go to Super Bowl. I think it's another crazy thing about Mahomes. It's his third Super Bowl in his first 5 years. So, like, when Orlando Brown's up there saying, like, y'all need to give him more respect and such, I have a feeling that's maybe what he's alluding to. But nonetheless, we wanted to say something in regards to that.
I just want to say that I get tired of the way that, like, and this is just inevitable, but we see it a lot in the NBA too, of like the voter fatigue kind of a thing. Like, well, Giannis has won 2 titles, or 2 MVPs, so we can't give him a third. And people are saying that about Nikola Jokic right now, despite the fact that he's like having an absurd season, and like the Nuggets are one of the best teams in the league. And we see that in the NFL too. Like, it feels like 4 or 5 years ago when Mahomes first came on the scene, everybody loved him, and he was he's the golden child of the NFL, and he's still out here dominating with the Chiefs. It's not like anything changed. Like, 5 straight AFC Championship games that they've hosted. That's crazy. You just said it, 3 Super Bowl appearances. He's going for potentially his 2nd ring. He might win his 2nd MVP this year.
I think I saw a stat where he has not played a road playoff game. Like, that's how good the Chiefs have been under him.
Crazy, like that's just absurd. And obviously, Kelsey, Chris Jones, Andy Reid, there's a lot of other key people there, Tyreek Hill, but, like, I don't know. I just feel like that people are not giving Mahomes the respect that he once got, because people are kind of tired of him now. And now it's like, oh, the Justin Herberts and Josh Allens and Burrows. And I love all those guys too, but it's like, we don't have to just forget that Mahomes exists. Like, he is still, and honestly, like, hands up, I said that Josh Allen was the best quarterback in the league before the season. And I don't know what my list is going to be, when we eventually reevaluate, but, like, I mean, it's like Mahomes is doing stuff, like, he's still out there just killing it. And I don't know. I think that a lot of people are just kind of forgetting and disrespecting him, because I was already starting to see some people, and this is kind of a crazy narrative that people are putting out, but they're like, if Mahomes loses this game, it's time to start talking about the fact that, like, they can't clutch it up at home in the playoffs, because apparently, like, they would have lost, and like you said, they haven't played a road playoff game, so the stat is a little skewed, but this would have been his, like, 3rd playoff loss in a conference championship game, and someone pulled a stat that would have been, like, the 2nd most all time. Who cares? Like, he's gone to 2 Super Bowls in that span.
There are franchises, not even the quarterback. There are fans and franchises that are wishing they could just get to the conference championship. Like, go talk to
have
any
never
of, like,
witnessed the Dallas Cowboys even making it to a conference championship in my lifetime. Never. And so you're going to tell me that we're going to criticize Patrick Mahomes because in a 5-year span, he lost in the conference title game 3 times, while also, I don't know, playing in 2 Super Bowls, winning one of them. Like, and obviously he didn't lose the 3rd time anyway. So, like, that point is null and void, because he won, they won the game. And so he's going to his 3rd Super Bowl. But that's just an absurd narrative. Like, if your floor is losing in the conference championship game and people are somehow finding a way to criticize you because of that, that's crazy to me. That is crazy to me.
Yeah, and the fact, this for context, the other two championship games he lost last year, Bengals, that went to overtime, down to the wire. We know the Bengals are obviously good since they came back to this year's AFC Championship. And the other one, the Patriots with Tom Brady, when they saw Gronk and Edelman, and that's when the Chiefs, I think that was
their first year getting there too, right?
Yeah, and that's when their defense, and that's once again that's when Mahomes didn't get touch the ball. Remember, in overtime, Brady then drove right down, scored, and it was game over. So not really
Mahomes'
want to
talk about context. Yeah,
I just see the number. So, like I said with the Valdez Cantley play, just things like that. I agree with you. Like people just, I don't understand. I just feel like people have become numb to it. I want to say, or just, I don't know. But yeah, hopefully, win or lose Super Bowl here, Mahomes gets the respect. And trust me, my quarterback rankings, he was 2 last year. I think I had Josh Allen also out 1. The spoiler, Josh Allen will not be my number. I love Josh Allen too. I've already been doing the rankings in my head. I don't think I'll have Josh Allen at 1. I think
I think we got to put Mahomes back at 1. Like it's you know,
and obviously we both anticipate that at least our pick would be he would probably be MVP. So
yeah,
that should probably reflect it. He should be. We'll see. Who knows? Like we said, everyone loves a good story. So yeah. Huge win for the Chiefs. For the Bengals going forward, like I said, at least they're keeping their staff, it looks like, and hopefully they can just keep the offensive line healthy, because that's also, we talk injuries about the Niners, like that's what also kind of killed the Bengals here. Right when they got their line going, like about a month ago, guys got hurt. Once again, it happens in the NFL, and just unfortunate, but I'm sure they'll be right back in the mix since. And they also had to sign Jesse Bates. I mentioned they have to, so they got a couple people they got to prioritize, but they got some money and they should be right back in the thick of things. So